The movie opens with a montage of scenes. The first one shows a woman on the verge of death with a briefcase beside her. Another scene shows her handcuffed and bleeding to death, while the final scene shows her near a burning building. She narrates that it was all because of her choices. The scene then shifts to some time ago, and we meet the same woman, Barbara, who's a seamstress by profession. Her house is filled with strange embroidered portraits that play voice recordings when she pulls their threads. Most of them are recordings of her time with her mother, who passed away some time ago. Barbara, who still hasn't recovered from the grief, is looking after the fabric shop alone. She specializes in talking portraits, but we see that her store is barely visited by anyone. Later, she heads to the house of one of her customers, Grace, to stitch her wedding dress. Barbara is a mobile seamstress, which means she goes house to house with her sewing kit. Upon reaching, she proceeds to stitch a button on Grace's wedding dress and ends up dropping it when Grace opens her sewing kit without permission. Button rolls near a floor vent, and Barbara goes to pick it up. But since the woman angered her earlier, she deliberately pushes it down. She makes it look like the button accidentally fell and assures her customer that she has a spare one at her shop. Grace is furious because her wedding is in a few hours, but Barbara puts a safety pin to hold the dress before rushing out of there. She gets inside her car and goes to get the spare button, taking a different route than usual. But after driving for a while, Barbara comes across a horrific accident scene. 2 motorcycles have crashed, and there are traces of drugs along with guns on the ground. There is also a large briefcase that catches her attention. The riders are seriously injured, but they're still trying to fight against each other. Barbara is left in complete shock and thinks about informing the authorities. But then she changes her mind and comes up with a genius plan instead. She brings out her sewing kit, unwinds 2 rolls, and loops them around her car. Barbara then takes the same 2 threads and carefully wraps them around the injured men. Makes sure to loop around the guns as well, and drags one of the motorcyclists on the other side of the road. After she's done, Barbara gets inside her car and drives away, pulling the threads behind her. Surprisingly, it creates a sort of system that ends up yanking both the guns towards the injured riders. The riders shoot at each other, seemingly killing them both. Up next, Barbara reverses her car, grabs the briefcase, and bolts away from there. She's ecstatic that she outsmarted the goons and snatched away their prize money. But upon reaching a bit further, Barbara realizes the threads are still hanging behind her car. She quickly stops and finds out that one of the needles she used earlier is missing since it has her store's name. She panics and immediately returns to the crime scene. She fortunately finds the needle, which is lodged in one of the man's hands. Barbara tries to pull it out, but ends up dropping it on the road. She begins looking for it when one of the men suddenly awakens and tries to reach for his gun. But Barbara grabs the gun first, putting her fingerprints all over it, now that she's also a part of the crime scene. A panic, Barbara throws away the guns. She also loads the injured man in her car and drives away from there. But we see that her needle is still on the road. Upon reaching her store, Barbara discreetly drags the injured man, whose name is back inside, and ties up his hands and legs with threads. She then uses her knowledge of sewing machines, knot, and ropes to create an improvised pulley, which helps her drag the man upstairs. Just as Barbara breathed a sigh of relief, someone arrives at the door and back, tries to scream for help. So she shoves some cloth inside his helmet before rushing downstairs. It turns out to be a furious Grace, who's already late for her wedding. She demands that her dress be fixed immediately. So Barbara quickly sews a button and sends her away. After rushing back up, she removes the gag from Beck. So he wastes no time and says that they're in danger because the father of the boy whom he just shot will come for them. Just then there's a sudden knock downstairs, and it turns out to be one of Barbara's students named Oscar. He's a kind old man who's making a talking quilt for his wife and wants Barbara's help finishing it. However, the panicked woman tells him he just can't enter without an appointment. In the meantime, that tries to call for help, but the gag on his mouth makes it impossible to shout. He then crawls using the rope he's tied to and somehow manages to reach the briefcase. Up next, Back moves towards the stairs and throws the briefcase down to attract the visitor's attention. But Barbara has already sent the old man out. With the danger narrowly averted, she quickly plans her next move. Barbara uses her extensive knowledge of sewing to attach the gun on the door, and also back, she makes loops and connects them in different places in the house. After she's done, Barbara waits behind the counter with a briefcase while an armed man named Hudson pulls over outside the house. As soon as he opens the door, the thread mechanism activates and his hand with the gun is yanked above back. Also, falls down the stairs with his gun and readies to shoot. But there are no bullets. And this gives Hudson enough time to free his hand and shoot back dead. Realizing her plan has failed, Barbara bolts away from the house with the briefcase in hand. She starts running through the woods. But Hudson subdues her with a shot to the leg. He then grabs one of her thread rolls and brutally chokes her with it until she goes limp. After this, Hudson opens the briefcase, which shockingly has millions in cash, and begins loading it into another bag. He also finds that there's a bomb underneath the last stack of cash, so he lets it be and takes off with the remaining money. Barbara, meanwhile, is on the verge of death, reconsidering her choices. The scene then shifts and we are taken back to when Barbara had just witnessed the bike accident. This time she doesn't do anything crazy and simply calls the police. Shortly after, an old cop who's also a wedding initiator named Miss Angle arrives and starts inspecting the crime scene. When she notices drugs on the road, she immediately realizes there's money involved. The old woman then inspects Barbara's car and eventually finds the briefcase in her trunk. Furious, she scolds her for trying something like this and hesitantly tells her to get out of the car. Miss Engel also asks Barbara to carry her sewing kit, as her robe needs some stitching. Following this, she drives everyone to the police station and handcuffs them. Barbara is also cuffed, but she's allowed to move much freely, so she can't. So the torn robe, the old cop then interrogates the men about what happened there. Doesn't say a word, but the other guy, Joshua, reluctantly blurts out that his father had sent him. He was supposed to deliver the drugs, but chickened out at the last moment. Joshua claims that his brutal father is now coming straight to the station to kill them all.
However,
Miss Engel doesn't take the threat seriously and says she got to officiate a wedding. She then heads to the other room, and we learn that it's none other than Grace's wedding. A panicked Barbara immediately starts looking for ways to escape, and she sees that the keys are on the table, but they're too far to reach. So she tells Beck to open his belt and tie them together with his shoelaces to make an improvised rope. He complies right away. And Barbara also starts preparing a blow dart out of paper before they begin. She demands that Beck let her escape, and also that they split the money. Beck hesitantly obliges and begins throwing his belt towards the table. Inside the wedding hall, Grace's safety pin has been undone, and it's now scraping her backside. She's having a real hard time focusing on the wedding due to the pain elsewhere. After several tries, Beck finally manages to land the belt in the correct position, and Barbara skillfully hooks it to the keys with her blow dart. Now he will have to slowly pull the belt to his side. Back at Grace, she's had enough and crashes out at her own wedding. MBS Angle is stunned to see her bloodied back, but says